Hey, Brent Richardson here. I'm a mortgage broker and certified financial planner, and I hope you'll join me today as we walk and talk about what the Central Bank of Canada is going to be doing this Wednesday, June 4th. So a lot of information floating around out there, but really everything is settling on the fact that the central bank is likely to hold their overnight rate on Wednesday. Specifically, there's a 75% chance, according to financial markets, that the central bank will hold, which actually still leaves, obviously, 25% that there will be a cut. But really, if we were to bet what's going to happen, it would most certainly be a hold. And really, what's backing this up is, well, there's three main things for now. One is inflation concerns. So inflation, it came in, the headline inflation for May came in nice and low. I believe it was 2.2%. That's the headline inflation. However, that's because of things like lower energy prices, lower gas prices, removal of the carbon tax. And so really, when we look at the, under the hood, if you will, we look at inflation, what's really happening, it was actually up month over month. So inflation's not exactly cooling. And there's a lot of concern that given all this protectionism, given all the trade policy that we're seeing, that inflation, that it's gonna take off potentially. Hopefully not. So that's one big thing that we're looking at, is the inflation and how that affects the central bank. The other thing is looking at the US and what is the US doing. So there's about a 99% chance that they will be holding this month when the Federal Reserve meets. And that looks like it's going to continue well into 2025, well into the summer or even fall before they think about cutting. So Canada can't cut too much more without really affecting our dollar. And so there's a whole slew of issues that come with a lower dollar. It's a whole debate there, but that is one reason that's coming into play here, that the States, the US, is extremely likely to hold. Now there's GDP, which Q1 GDP came out last week, the last week of May, and that came in, the headline GDP came in high. So traditionally, when there's strong growth, we don't really see the central bank lower rates. They tend to save a rate cut for periods of weakness. And so we add up all these things, and it looks very likely that there will be a hold this Wednesday, June 4th. Looking a little ahead though, if we look at the GDP number that was released last week, if we look at that a bit more specifically, what it showed is that GDP saw a bit of a boost, a short-term boost, if you will. And this came from companies, businesses, even government organizations looking to get in ahead of tariffs. So they did their orders, they placed bigger orders, they got in ahead of tariffs, and so this put a surge on GDP. So even though we're seeing this come through the numbers, there's likely to be less business in the future as a result of more business done in the first part of 2025. And so we're likely to see a bit of a deterioration later in 2025. Probably it'll really settle in late summer. In the fall is when we'll see some weaker numbers. And along with that, we'll be looking at inflation numbers. We'll be looking at, inflation definitely, but employment. In the first 3 months of 2025, Canada lost 66,000 full-time jobs. Now there were some part-time jobs to offset that, but that's not quite the same. And so we'll be keeping our eye on these kinds of weaknesses and where these economic trends are going. where they seem to be going more under the surface, if you will, is weaker. And when we see weaker economic trends, this is going to lower mortgage rates. It's going to lower interest rates. It's going to, I should say, encourage the Bank of Canada to lower their rate. And so we'll be keeping our eye on this. I'm going to report back on June 4th to see what happens and what it's looking like going from there. As I say, still a small chance there could be a cut on Wednesday. TD Bank thinks there will be a cut. They're the one big bank that thinks there'll be a cut. So let's see if they're right. Otherwise, I thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.